So here we're starting our pre-production phase of our old school meets new school level design project. And you'll see that on the screen I have the game that I'm picking and I'll be working alongside of you guys for the semester. It's an old NES game called Trojan. So I'm going to go ahead and press play. This is one of the videos that I used to create a blueprint of the level. I would scroll through, I would pause, take screenshots by pressing print screen on my keyboard, and then I would just open up Photoshop like so. I would go to new, press OK, hit Control V to paste. If it would paste, let me do that print screen again. Print screen on the keyboard, Control V to paste, and like so, I would stitch together a full layout of the level. So I'm going to play the video a little bit longer as I talk about the project. As you can see, it's a 2D game made primarily of sprites and simple drawn backgrounds. Old school games are a nice way to study modular asset design, and that most of the levels are made from reused parts that have been used over and over again. You'll see the buildings in the background constantly used, these tile sets and the windows constantly used. Here you see we have a sewer stage that I'll probably be adding to my level. Uh, More reused assets. All these windows are the same thing. So this first 2 weeks is going to be devoted to creating the blueprints or the plan of attack for our game here. We're going to shy away from creating the actual combat in our game, and that's the level I chose. As you can see, there's many levels to the game, but the level I showed right here is just the first level I'm going to be making. So why don't we go? That's the YouTube video I used. So why don't we see what we're actually going to be delivering for the next 2 weeks? The first thing we're going to do is choose an old school game. And like I said, I chose Trojan right here. And then we're going to create the blueprints of screenshots, the screenshot for the blueprint here. And you can see here, I have a nice little linked image of the blueprints I made of the game here. I'll zoom in a little bit. You can see it's just multiple stitched together parts in Photoshop where I would just come in and isolate just this picture right here, select negative, and then I would go in and just boom, 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 paste all the screenshots together like so. And I came up with something like this. This is a great starting point for you because it not only shows you how the level is laid out, but also lets you pick up some visual reference for what you're going to be modeling. So from here, I went in and let me minimize some of this stuff. You can see here, here's my actual JPEG on my computer. I went in and I identified what parts of this level I was going to have to create. And I even went a step further and did a blackout of every single modular asset in the game. All right, and I got them numbered because they're going to correspond to the assets list we're going to create. So you can see stuff like the barrel right here, the manhole, the window, the vents, different roll-up doors, and then, for instance, 32 right here is just a tileable stucco texture I'll have to make, so I can make the whole building. See, that's just a tileable asset I'll create to create this whole building face. So that's kind of your goal here, is to go through and identify all those different assets. So in conjunction of making that blackout, we're going to make a Google Sheet. And I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how we can do that. So I'm logged in to Google right here. As you can see, here's my little email I'm already logged in with. So I'm going to click on my little box here, and I'm going to go to Drive. All right, and I have my Google Drive folder hierarchy here. I'm gonna go to my teaching folder, level design 1, and here I have a project for my game I'm making. I have other folders dedicated to the actual lesson plans for each chapter. I also, this is probably what you guys will have, just a full folder for your project here. And I have a lot of different folders here that'll hold the asset models, my sound effects, all my textures. These first three assets will be the actual models, sound files, and pictures or texture files I'll be adding into the game. And documentation is where I keep my asset list right here. So why don't we create a new Google Sheets? So I'm going to go to New, go to Google Sheets, and then I can just rename this Sample Assets. You can name it whatever you like. And then from here, you can just go in and edit to your heart's content. I want to go ahead and show you what I've already created for my assets list. So I'm going to bring up my assets list, and this is linked on your module here. But as you can see, I've got all this stuff made. I think I'm going to go ahead and delete this row. I went in and added a name for all the models here, like a little title name. But I think I needed to delete that because I'm going to bring up my blacked out, because the numbers in my spreadsheet correspond to the numbers I've drawn here. So if I look at number 3, I can quickly see that's background building 1. So fence panel, which one is that? Number 15. So I'm going to look here. 15. There's my fence panel. And 14 will be the pole for my fence. So you can see I've created a nice little legend and a nice little photo reference for all the assets I'm going to be making here. You don't have to go to this extreme to black it out like I did in image editing software, but it might be helpful to at least go in and number them and pinpoint each asset you'll need to make. There seems to be a lot here. I think I have about 33 total, but with the workflows I'll be showing you guys, a lot of these things can be banged out in minutes. So it looks like a lot of work, a lot of assets, but with some really quick workflows, some really easy tools, we'll be able to make these assets in no time. Okay, so I have my asset list of all the models I need to make. I also want you guys to add a list of the mechanics you'll need for your level. So one of the mechanics I'm going to have is on the other side of my level. So we only see one side of my level right here. Since it's a 2D game, we only see it in one perspective. But when we make this 3D and we're walking around in first-person view, I'm going to be able to see the foreground and what's on the other side of this camera. So I'm going to make this be a oceanfront walkway. So on the other side, I'm going to have like a fence and then a body of water on the other side. That way, I can quickly determine what's on the other side of the camera here with something that's a little bit flashy, some nice moving water. And then we have ladder climbing for my sewer section here that I'm going to be able to drop down into. And you'll notice that in this picture, the ladder is really tall up here. And you're supposed to be able to get this power up to jump up. I can either create the same kind of power up and allow the player to be able to jump up through the wall, but I want to create a ladder switch release that drops the ladder down. That way I can create a mechanic where I can demonstrate how to collect or trigger a switch and have an animation of the ladder falling, and also be able to add the functionality of ladder climbing in my level. So the player will have to navigate through this little sewer room, hit the switch, probably over here in the corner. It'll unlock the ladder, it'll fall down, and add some code to level the player to climb back up. Molotov cocktails from the window. Let's see if I have my videos still up. Well, you'll notice that in a certain part of the level here, we have these little guys in the window here, and they're throwing down little bombs. Well, I'm not going to have the little character. We're not going to be doing any character modeling in this exercise, but I am going to have randomly thrown Molotov cocktails coming out of these windows when the player comes in the proximity of this area. And that'll consist of adding a projectile with a force and gravity so it comes arcing out of the window, and then having it collide with the ground, in which we trigger a particle fire system and a damaging field that will hurt the player's health. Are there any other things I need to add here? I got a lot of windows open. All right. There's my asset list, and this is not part of the level, but I'm going to add a little bit of functionality here. I'm going to add a door opening section, in which probably in a part of the level, maybe right here, I'm going to have the fence where it comes out and cuts off, makes a wall straight across this little intersection here, in which the player will have to open a chain link door so they can get through the rest of the level, just to show, opening door mechanics. So it's a little bit of something added to the level, but ultimately I think it'll create a more interesting environment for us to explore. And I also have a little special notes right here for things you may have to consider during the modeling and building process. Since I'm going to be tiling the floor here, let me bring up my level again. Since I'm going to be tiling the floor here, which is just going to be a repeated, almost rub cobblestone or terracotta pattern design here. If I'm going to have the player be able to fall through this manhole here, I'm going to have some kind of special tile here where I can have a circular piece cut out on the floor with a manhole on top of it. So that's a special modeling consideration that I'm going to have to take special note of right here. So this is our asset list. This is what's going to keep our thoughts straight. What's going to help us, budget our time and kind of help us attack what order we want to model things in, or what things we've already modeled and what things we need to model. You'll see I have some checklists here. So if I got it modeled, I'll check it. If I got it textured and if it's finished and ready for game ready. That way I'll know exactly what assets need to be finished and what assets are already finished. All right. So the next thing we're going to do for the next 2 weeks, and the last thing I'm going to require of you guys, is to create a blocked out level in Unity using primitives. And I'm going to go ahead and walk us through that. You'll see here there's a clickable link to my asset list that you maybe can get an idea of. All right, so we're going to block out our level in Unity. So I'm going to go ahead and set up that right now. And this blocked out scene is what we're going to use for the rest of our semester here. We're going to go ahead and set up our whole project in Unity right now together. So I'm going to click on Unity. All right. Unity 5.1, and you'll see here some of my other projects I've worked on. But I'm going to create a new project. I'm going to call this Trojan Street, or I'll just call it Trojan, because I may go back in and add other levels. So the whole project name will just be Trojan. And I'm going to click on these little dotted lines here so I can navigate where I want to put this Unity project folder. All right. So why don't I go to my desktop? I'm going to navigate to my Google Drive. Here's my teaching, level design 1. Here's my Trojan project. And you'll notice I have a Unity project folder with a shortcut. This shortcut actually takes us to my Trojan project folder on my hard drive. Unity does not like to keep projects inside your Google Drive folders. So if you've been doing that, I've noticed that Unity doesn't like it. So I always store my Unity projects on my hard drive. So I'm going to navigate back there, teaching, level design 1, Trojan project, and I'm going to select the Unity project folder I have set up. I'm going to select folder, and this is going to be 3D, so I'm going to click 3D right there, and I'm going to create my project. All right, so we have a blank Unity folder right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some folders in my assets window right here that'll help us get set up really quickly. So I'm going to have one for materials that I'm going to apply to my models. I want to I'll make a new folder, and I'll just press Control D to dupe it a few times. I'll go in and I'm going to rename them. I know I'm going to have some scripts running. I'm just double clicking these folders here. or single clicking them. Um, Meshes, that's where I'll put all my models. Textures is where I will store my actual textures. Scenes is where I will save my levels. Is there anything else that I might be using? I might make a prototype folder that where I can go in and create individual scenes where I can test things out, test different mechanics. Let's do sound effects. And maybe have one for visual effects where I can store particle systems that I'm going to make, such as the fire from my Molotov cocktail. That's where I'll put all my particle systems. And I think for right now, that will do fine. All right, so now I'm going to go into my scenes folder, and I'm going to go ahead and save this scene. So I'm going to navigate to my scenes, and I'm going to call this street level 01. And this will be the scene that we're going to start blocking out our level in with 3D primitives. And hopefully, if you set it up nice and neatly, you'll just be able to keep using this scene to swap out the primitives with the actual models you'll be making. All right. Leave the main camera and the directional light in for right now. They're not going to be doing too much. So this is where your little blueprint's really going to come in handy. And now we need to start considering the dimensions and height of everything in our level. So why don't we surmise this that our character is, I don't know, 2 meters tall. That's or a meter and a half tall. That's about 5.5 feet or something like that. Yeah, I'm just going to go with that, meter and a half. So that's going to give us a basis for where we can judge the height of everything in our scene. And you guys are really going to have to start paying attention to units of measurement while you're modeling and creating your levels in Unity, just so all the scale of everything in your level works really well. So I'm going to go ahead and make a 3D object with a cube. And this is going to be my character. All right, this is where I'm going to start judging the height of everything based on my level. And I'm going to scale this guy to be 1.5 meters tall. Unity's default measurement is meters. And I'm going to make him a little skinny, do like 0.3, 0.3. And there we have my little character here. All right, and I'm going to position him up on the ground view. I can go to 2D. That way I can position him right on the 0 axis, which will be our ground, like so. So now that I have a character, I'm going to make sure height value or something like that. Now that I have a comparative height for the rest of my level, I can now start comparing the height of my character to the objects in my scene. That way, I'll know exactly how tall I need to start making things. And a lot of it will be approximation, but at least now we have a starting point here. So the first thing I'm going to do is make the ground in my level. So I'm going to go to Unity, and I'm just going to make a simple plane here. I'm going to reset its transforms, and the length of it, I'll just scale it. For right now, I'm just going to kind of scale it large, because I don't know exactly how long the level is going to be. And now you have to make a decision. Do you want the center of the graph to be the actual center of your level, or do you want the center of the graph to be where the level starts? I don't really have a preference. It's just something you need to keep in mind when you start it. So, but I'm going to actually I'm going to overlap a little bit, but I'm going to make that 0 point on the axis where my level actually starts. So here's my character, and now we have a ground. And I'm going to label this ground. And when I want to go ahead and make an empty game object, I'm going to call this blocked out. And this is going to be my parent folder for all the blocked out assets in my game here. All right, so this is where my character starts. All right, and why don't we just get started here? I'll just start from left to right. Why don't I start by making this blacked out wall here? In my mind, it's blacked out because there's not, in this game, there's not a light source to illuminate it. But I'm going to make it a concrete wall with barbed wire on top. So I need to figure out how tall I'm going to make this wall. So it's going to be a little bit of guessing. I know it's in the background, so it may not be as tall as that building, but it's definitely not just 2.5 character units tall because of atmospheric or perspective going on here. So I'm going to create just another cube here and maybe scale it like so. Why don't we say the height of this wall is, I don't know, 5 meters tall. Is that going to be tall enough? I think that'll be okay. I mean, that's pretty tall. Why don't we go 6? All right, 6 meters tall. And I'm going to push it back a little bit. And that looks about to be right. See, I pushed it back about negative 12 units. And I'm just going to scale this in the z-axis so we can cover up my entire level. What's going on here with my ground? Oh, I was in the wrong perspective here. So I'm going to go in and redo the scaling here. It's scaled in the z-axis like so. Now I'm going to push it back. Let's do 0 there. And let's push it back in the z-axis, that many units. And then, since my wall is going to be repeating, I can just scale it out to be however long I want it to be. So I'll just put this as background wall. And I can even start referring to my asset list here and start numbering my blocked out assets according to what number they are in my asset wall. So background high wall is number 4. So why don't I do this? Why don't I call this 04 background wall? And my ground is, why don't I refer to my blacked out here? My ground looks like it is number 22. Green ground, green cobblestone. So in my Unity scene, why don't I just go 22 ground? There we go. And I'm just going to press Control F on when I select my character. And why don't I bring this like so? Now it seems to be about right. The wall isn't too high. You know, from this perspective, it's about 2.5 units big. So that's about 3 or so. That's good enough for me. All right. There we go. So that's where 0 is. Why don't I readjust my ground and background wall to start closer to where I want it to, like so. All right, so that's my background wall. And a lot of this will just be me going through and blocking it out. So I'm going to pause and unpause the video as I build out this level, and I'll unpause it whenever I come across interesting areas that I may feel like you guys can benefit from seeing how I tackled it. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on blocking out my level real quick. All right, so I'm going to tackle this leftmost little area here where it looks like we have a broken down building. So I'm going to go ahead and I got to start figuring out what are the dimensions of things like that going to be. So I'm going to create empty game object. I'm going to make a cube. All right. And I'm going to estimate that this little wall right here is 2.5 meters tall. So I'm going to scale that 2.5. And then I'm going to say that's about, I don't know, it's almost squarish, right? So maybe 2 meters long. And and there's 2 different assets that comprise this little section here. This little broken down beam here and this actual brick wall. Well, I'm not going to go in, for instance, and make a 3D primitive for each little asset here. This is really just to get dimensions down and to block out the level to see what it'll look like. So I'm going to go ahead and lump this whole brick wall and this little column here as one big cube. And you'll notice it's, even though it's destroyed, I'm still going to describe it as an overall cube here. So I want to scale it to be 2 in that direction. And then what do I see? Maybe I needed to make it a little bit wider. 3. I'll make it 3. And I'm going to place it about right there, because I'll have to come in and figure out how I'm going to handle this back section of my level, because I don't want the player just to see this, open hole here. So I'm going to call this, I don't know, destroyed wall 01. And since it's comprised of 2 different assets here, I'm not going to bother giving it a name. I'm just going to kind of label it. So whenever I click on things in my scene, I can see maybe what they're called and what they correspond to. And I have these little girders in the background here. I might go ahead and build those out, but I'm going to go ahead and hold off. I'm going to only worry about things in the immediate foreground right now. So I think I'm going to go ahead and move over to the fence here. And you can tackle the dimensions of the fence one of 2 ways. You can either eye it, or you can actually go online and research maybe how tall most fences are. But in this case, I'm just going to eye that. So I'm going to create a new 3D object, call this a cube. We'll zoom in on it. And I want it to be about 2 meters tall. All right. Compare it to my character height. And what do you think? Maybe not tall enough? Why don't I do 2.5? I don't know. I'll go with that. And then I'm going to make it kind of skinny to simulate that chain, or simulate the kind of the thin fence feel. And I'm just going to start scaling it. Now I got to place it here. So I'm constantly going back and forth between the engine, or between my engine and my reference art. And I'm just getting an overall feel of how the fence actually works. So we can see here on this part of the level, the fence is a little bit closer to our background, to our foreground images. And then over here, this is where a boss fight happened, and this is kind of the second part of the first level. We see that the fence is pushed a little bit further back. So I'm going to go ahead and take care and acknowledge that. So I'm going to have the fence, maybe 5.5 meters back. Is that comparable? Maybe a little bit further. Maybe I'll do 6 meters back here. And I think it starts a little bit after this broken wall, or kind of right on it, to be honest. All right. And then it runs the entire length of this first section here, I think. Let me go back and check. Yep, it goes the entire length here. So there's some interesting things that are going to come up, because it looks like some of the buildings here, the fence goes behind these buildings. So maybe the fence either is farther back, or it runs into the building and then stops. So I'm going to leave the fence like it is right now, because I really need to start getting a feel for how these buildings are going to work. That way I can worry more about the things in the background of my scene here. So I'm looking at my assets. Yeah, things are looking good. So now why don't I go ahead and tackle these big buildings right here. And then we can go back in and fill things like the barrels and the fence back here, and maybe some of these beams and girders going on. And again, our building is comprised of several different assets here. So I'm going to go ahead and describe the overall size of our building here using one cube. And then we'll look and see how we're going to handle those assets there. So here's another cube. Reset. Keep in mind, this isn't just an exercise in futility. This is really what's going to determine our whole level. These are the building blocks and blueprints of our level here. So we really want to spend time here to make sure we get it right. So I'm going to go in here now, and to really maybe get a sense for how big our character is, I'm going to open this in Photoshop. You'll see why in a second. I'm going to open... Actually, I'll just get my folder here. I'll take my level 1 and I'll pop it right into there, and it'll open up my level. So background, I'm going to go ahead and make its own layer by double clicking it and pressing OK. I want to make a new layer here. I want to zoom in, and I'm going to make a level of measurement based on the height of my character here. So I'm going to grab a brush. Let me undo that white spot. And I'm going to create a nice magenta color. And I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to make where his head is and where his feet are. And then I'm going to create a nice vertical line to connect the two. Come in, tidy this up. And now effectively, I have a unit of measurement inside of Photoshop. I can press Control T to rotate. And if you hold down Shift, you can rotate it at exact angles. Now I can measure, according to the height of my character, kind of how big this building is going to be. So to duplicate this, I hold down Control and Shift in my layer. I hold down Control Shift, select the layer I want to duplicate, and just drag it down. And that's how we can make some quick copies. And then I'm just going to stack these end to end to get a loose estimate of how big or how tall and how long this building is. So I guess we can say about 3.5 character units long or wide. And why don't we make another copy here, and I'll do the height real quick. And it looks like the building kind of goes off the playing field here, or off the viewing camera here. All right. We can already see, though, that it's at least pretty much 4 character units tall, maybe a little bit cut off from that. So we have 3.5 long by 4 tall, and a character measurement was, remember, 1.5 meters tall. So let's do some quick mental math here. Let me bring up my Photoshop. So we have 1.5, 1.5, that's 3, 4.5, and then half of 1.5 is 0.75. So we got about 3.75 long. So in my x-axis, let's go 3.75. Actually, no, it's 4.5 plus 7.5. So that's going to be 4.25 wide. Nope, I'm wrong again. 5.25. There we go. Something thereabouts. All right. And we can even be anal and take your character here, rotate him 90, and then you can even stack your character height meter end to end just to make sure you're exactly right. And there we go. About 3.5 character units. All right. And he was 4 character units tall, but it goes past the camera, so it needs to be at least I don't know, 6 meters tall. So why don't we make this 7.5? Well, why don't I want to rotate it? Why don't we make this at least 7.5 meters tall? All right, that looks more like the building size. Now we have the interesting part of where is this building positioned in the z-axis or in the depth axis, and how deep does it go? Well, it looks like it's almost like right on the character's. Maybe there's a meter separation between the building and the player. So, right, this is kind of like a preference for you guys now. So why don't I do something like that? And that's a building. And you'll see how we have the fence kind of just running into it. If the fence was all the way around, then the building would have to be pretty shallow, and that doesn't look like a very cool building. So I'm going to make these buildings deep-ish. And we'll just have my fence, connecting into the building here. So it'll look like the fence just terminates at the side of this building. All right. And why don't we call this building 1? And I'll put it in my blocked out. What is this cube here? That's my fence. Fence 0. And I'm doing the parentheses here because when you duplicate something, that's how Unity just makes duplicates. It does a parentheses and it counts it down from there. All right, so now I've already made a duplicate of my building. I think there's another one coming up pretty soon here. Here we have another building that's a little bit longer than it is tall, and we do see the top of this one. So why don't we just go in and kind of use our measurements. So I'm going to delete those, and we'll measure out the distance between these buildings here. I might have said it differently. It's not Control Shift, it's Control Alt. Drag that down. So yeah, sorry if you got confused a second back there. Control Alt. I might have said it right. I don't know. So here we have a space of 2.5 character units. So that's 1.5, 3, and then 3.75 distance apart. So why don't I just go into Unity? I'm going to copy my character again. -90. And then why don't I scale it to 3.75? And here we have a pretty accurate scaled down version or 3D scale of how these buildings are separated based on my character height chart that I'm using. All right, so we got to do a few things now. Why don't we go in? It's locked. And I'm going to measure the length or the width of this building here. Control Alt to duplicate that layer. And then I'm just holding down Shift to move it. Press with the V key is your translate tool. So here we have, I don't know, it's almost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 long. So that's 3, 6, 9 meters long. So I'm going to go in and scale this to be 6. Actually, I said 9. 9 long. And then I can actually, you know what, instead of having to just duplicate those constantly, I'm going to highlight all of my measurement layers, hit Control E to combine them all. Now I can just basically rotate as I see fit. I don't have to keep duplicating. So 1, 2, 3. So we have about 3.25 character units tall. So I'm going to go in to Unity here. I'm going to stack. I'm going to duplicate Control D and stack these up. You can use math, but I'm showing us a few different ways here. There we go. And then I can scale my building to correspond to the height here. And you'll notice that maybe this is a little bit harder way to do it because now when I scale it from the center, so I'm constantly going to have to go back and tweak and tweak and tweak. When do I get this right on the building? So I want it to be about right there. So you'll see that I'll have to tweak and then move and tweak and move. Or I can just get lucky and almost nail it on the first try. And that's our second building with pretty good placement. And we'll keep it the same depth as my first building. All right. And then I'm going to go ahead and use those same techniques to block out the rest of the buildings in my scene, in which I come in and measure the distance from one building to the next, and then measure the width and the height of each building. I'm going to do that for the rest of my level for this building and that building, and then that little building fence area right there. So I'm going to go ahead and pause and do that so you guys aren't bored to death. I'll be right back. So here I have all of my buildings blocked out. There's a few things I want you guys to take note of. First, it was helpful to go into shaded wireframe mode instead of just shaded. So I just clicked here, and you can do wireframe, or you can go into shaded wireframe. That made it easier for me to, I don't know, just to see where the actual dimensions and edges of these buildings were. Second thing I want you to notice is that all of my measurements don't don't pay mind to the Z coordinate here. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and bring my buildings. I have all my buildings labeled right here. I'm just go ahead and make all my buildings 9 meters deep, and I'm going to position them back like so. All right. So there's going to be a few things I'm going to do here before I get started on the rest of the level. The first I want to make mention of is that all of my buildings measurements, keep your note on the scale right here, are in multiples of at least 0.25. So 0.25 can be divided into this. 0.25 can be divided into that. So why is that important? Well, that means when I'm making these buildings, I can make tiles. Let's bring this cube out. Actually, let's reset its components. So I can make tiles that are 0.25, 0.25, 0.25, that are 0.25 meters big if I wanted to. And in fact, I probably might go back in and revise that because that's a pretty small tile for a building this big. You know, even though I have exact measurements going on right here, I might make them all divisible by 0.5. I don't know. It's just up to you because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making tiles of our texture like so, like flat planes, and we're just going to be stacking them into each other or connecting them like this. And we're going to do that for all the building faces here. So boop, 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 boop. So that'll be something to consider when you're making the dimensions of your level. I could, fudge the dimensions of my level here, even though this is technically scaled at 5.2 across. I could just make them all multiples of 1 meter. So I could make that 5, and I could round that up to 8. And now I can have 1 meter tall cubes or planes and tile it pretty seamlessly. In fact, I'm going to go and do that right now. That'll just make the modular asset of creating all my buildings that much easier. See how everything's a whole number? So I can go, when I'm building this stuff, I can make a plane. This is not a really good example because Maya's plane tool creates this huge thing here. So in Maya, you would make a simple plane. And why don't we just go ahead and represent that by a cube here. And this plane is going to be, I'll make this real skinny. But whenever you're making it in Maya, it's going to be completely flat. So I can make just a 1 by 1 metered unit. And then if everything's divisible by 1, like this building 5 and 8, I can do 5 tiles wide by 8 tiles tall, like so. And when we create our textures, they're going to flow seamlessly from one tile to the next. So it'll look like one seamless building going on here. I'm just doing a quick and dirty representation of what it'll look like. So you just get an idea of how we're going to build the majority of our assets in the game. So we don't have to model a whole building. We can just model one tile of it. And boom, we've created our whole building using 1 by 1 meter tiles, and everything's gravy. I'm going to go in and delete that for right now. So that's what we're kind of getting at here. So if I go back and adjust all the dimensions here, I'll make that 4 by 3. And I'll just place it like so, fudging things here and there. Let's do another 3 by 3 there. So all these measurements are what I got from actually using my little measurement tool here. Now I'm kind of just going back and rounding everything off, 9 by 3. So everything is a, 1 divisible by 1 unit, whole numbers here. So now that my buildings are all made, I know that it'll be easy to go in and just create them by using 1 meter tiles. And granted, some of these buildings are not exactly cubes, right? We have destroyed areas here, missing parts there. But at least starting out on the right foot, we have the basic dimensions of my buildings covered here. So now we have another problem that we're going to have to face with translating this level to 3D. Do I want the wall to be flush, the concrete back wall here, this little black wall here? Do I want it to be flush with the buildings? I probably don't, so I'm probably going to move the wall back to maybe 15 units back. But that means it's going to look smaller in the background. So why don't I increase its height to 8 meters tall? There we go. Now I have a little bit of an alleyway between the wall and where these buildings terminate. Now I can go in and finish putting my fence in where I want it. And I'm just going to do that by, actually I'm just going to make one big long fence. And remember, I have 2 different fence planes. I got one that's a little bit closer and one that's a little bit farther back. So I'll just place it here. Where does it get farther back at? I think right here. Yeah, right before this weird little cube area. Yep, so that's the little cube area. So I'll duplicate this fence once, push it back a little bit more, and then I can just continue on like so. I'll bring this back a little bit so I don't get my fence peeking through there. Maybe I'll push it a little bit more forward. Actually, I could even push this behind the buildings. In fact, I think that's what I'm going to do, just create a little bit more of an interest. Like make the fence start at the back of the building rather than terminate right in the middle of them. And that'll kind of give me that feel where the fence is a little bit farther back. All right, so now that I got my fences problem figured out, I can actually go back in and readjust the size of my ground here because I know how long my level is because I went in and measured the buildings here. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust that like so. I'm going to give care that there's enough space here. And I can even do that with my concrete wall now. In fact, what did I scale this to? That can't be right. The plane must be on its own little thing. I'll just have to eye this. Yeah, the plane's got its own little measurement. I'm going to just take my fence here, position it like so. So now I have a pretty good idea of how big my level is going to be. All right, and I'm going to take my ground and even simplify it even more. Because I won't need the ground over there. And on this side of the camera, I'm going to have a little another fence here, or maybe some kind of rail. And this side's going to be like the ocean front or a river. And maybe on the other side, I'll have some more of these buildings in the background to kind of simulate that there's a river running through here. And this is like the river walk or so, something like that. All right, so from here, it's just a matter of, I guess, if you want to block in different little props here. I mean, we've basically got the level already made. Now we just need to account for figure out the dimensions of our beams and girders real quick, and figure out how big we want our capsules here. And you can always go in and even measure out. In fact, I would measure out the dimensions of your windows here. So going back to one unit of measurement right here, one character height being 1.5 meters, you could probably go in and approximate how wide these windows are, and that looks to be about maybe half of this. So 0.75 meters wide by I don't know. Oh, that's not what I want. Oh, where's my history? I messed up. Go back to my history. There we go. Hopefully I'm not moving too fast in Photoshop. I'm assuming you guys have had experience with it before. 0.25 by wide by 0.75 meters tall. And then when you're modeling in Maya, you can even go in and go model it to those specifications. And in fact, if you're really on the ball, why don't we add a insert column to the right? We can add, I don't know, maybe a width and height here. That way you can go in and after you measure it out, you can just make a note of it here. So that was window narrow, 2.5 or 0.25 by 0.75. There we go. That way, when you're modeling stuff, now you can exactly go into Maya and model it exactly the dimensions that you need. So I'm being pretty anal about this dimension stuff, right? Well, nothing's worse when you're building a level of out of proportioned props and out of proportioned uh, walls and other types of environments. It's just bad. You don't want to do that. So taking the time to really go through and measure, get an idea of the relative dimensions and measurements between your various assets in your level is probably a pretty useful thing to do. So I'm not going to bore you guys with the rest of the process here. You guys have the tools now to be able to block out and get a handle on the dimensions of your objects. Remember, the key here was creating a point of measurement for reference. And in that regard, my point of measurement was how tall my character is. And that's a pretty good point of reference because this little blue guy with the sword is going to be our first person perspective character controller. And if we measure the character controller to be the same height as this guy, in fact, why don't we go ahead and do that? And then we'll call it a quits on this, and you guys can get to work on planning your game out. So to bring in your first person controller, I want to click on Assets, Import Package. I'm going to go to Characters. And then I'm just going to go ahead and import all that. Let Unity do its thing. So now it's finished importing the standard assets. So we have a standard assets folder. We can go to characters and first person character. I'll go to my free prefab. Then I can just drag and drop my first person controller into the scene. I'll reset its transforms. And there we go. And you know what? The first person controller is almost the same size as our person here. So why don't we compare that stuff? So to get it to the same size as our reference point here, I'm going to open up my first person controller. There's my character. I'm going to go ahead and press play. It's looking to be about the right distance already. Maybe a little bit taller because that's my first person height indicator or my character height indicator. So why don't I go in and change what's going on here? So my first person character is actually a camera here. So I'm going to position, and why don't I rotate him so he's facing right now. And then I'm going to go in and adjust his collider, this capsule collider here, to be more in tone with the actual height I want. So with my first person controller selected, where's my collider? Is it on here? Audio listener, character controller. I bet it's hidden in one of these guys right here. Yep, instead of a collider, they have a character controller component here. And here you can adjust the radius and the height of your collider here. And then position the capsule collider like so. So that's more of what we were thinking. So there we go. Yep, that's about right. So now I can go in and preview my level. It's blocked out. Everything looks to be about right as far as buildings go, according to my reference here. I guess I can jump up on some things here and there. I might have to adjust that jump height. I don't want my character jumping that tall. So you can go to my first person controller stuff, jump speed, run speed, gravity multiplier. There's probably a jump value here. Run speed, run step, lengthen, stick to ground. In fact, we could probably adjust the gravity multiplier. That might do it. I wonder if 1 means more gravity or less gravity. Oh, that's definitely less gravity. Now we're getting into, I don't know, superhero territories here. But it's fun, isn't it? I don't know. I'll maybe adjust that to 3 gravity. There we go. I guess gravity just dictates how tall you can jump. Now I can't jump on any of the building tops. Granted, this little building right here was like a torn down wall, so it might have been possible to jump up there. That's just not the case there. So now we got my level blocked out, and I got a first person controller, and I'm gonna go in probably later and go in and block out where I'll put my barrels and whatnot. But for the most part, my dimensions are set in stone. And this might be a good time for you guys to figure out what you're going to do on the right side of your screen here, because, we're not just looking at it from this perspective anymore, right? Now we got this whole other area here. And the easiest solution would probably be just to take some of the same buildings and assets, and you can just duplicate it on the other side. So you can make like this is just a street with more buildings and whatnot on the other side. Just add a little bit more variation with some of your assets, and that would be good enough. Well, you can really just kind of have some fun. You can make brand new assets. You can create something totally interesting on this side. It just depends on how far you want to take it. Myself, I'm going to add like that river I was talking about earlier. So that does it for this video. When you finish all this stuff, I want to see uh, this level and your project all set up. I want you to export it as a package here. I want you to export that and send it into your Dropbox, turn-in Dropbox, along with a link to your spreadsheet that you've made, your asset list spreadsheet. I want you to email me a link to that. So if you want to email a link, you just go to back to your asset list, go to File, go to Publish to Web, and go to Publish. And then it'll give you this link right here. Just email me that link. And I also want you to email me some of your JPEGs that we're using for reference that you made, or just any kind of reference that you were able to squeeze out of your game on YouTube or wherever you want to get your images from. All right, so you guys got 2 weeks to get all this done. The better you prepare in this section of the project, the more success you'll have down the future. Trust me from experience. I know how proper planning can just make it way easier down into the future. So I hope you guys learned a bit or two about getting the level creation process started, and I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. Thanks.